About Damon, he's a certified public accountant who specializes in providing advice in accounting to small accounting solutions to small businesses. He received his bachelor's of accounting and master's in business administration from North Carolina State University. And prior to becoming a CPA and establishing his own firm, he was the owner of A1 Cleaning, a commercial cleaning company. He and his wife Angel have been married for 9 years, and they have been blessed with 2 beautiful daughters, Nora, who is 3, and Claire, who is 2. But sometimes Damon doesn't know if he has 2 daughters or if he's the owner of a zoo, because his girls like to pretend that they are animals. Please welcome to the podium, Damon Utacek.
I guess you could say that there are 2 moons in my head. Like many other people, I look up at the moon, and it's pretty fascinating. Sometimes there's a little sliver, and then other times it's a full moon. But then I think of that other moon, the moon that I saw up close. And you know, it is kind of hard to believe that I actually went up there. Those were the words of Michael Collins, one of the Apollo 11 astronauts. The Apollo 11 program is quite an amazing program. It teaches us a number of things. It teaches us that there's value in a vision. It teaches us never to quit. And finally, it teaches us that it's all worth it. But above all, it teaches us that anything is possible. 50 years ago, times were a lot different. There were 2 main ideologies. Here in the U.S., democracy and capitalism. In Russia, communism. Russians hated Americans. Americans were scared of Russians. In fact, we built many, many nuclear weapons to protect ourselves from each other. Then, in 1958, we as Americans stood aghast, scared, and embarrassed as a little blip went around the Earth named Sputnik. How could they do this? They didn't even know how to build refrigerators. We fear this. Someone was sitting down on the job. They should be court-martialed. This was the American sentiment at that time. And after that, President Eisenhower established the National Aeronautics and Space Administration to get us into the race that we were already falling behind in. Step after step. First man goes into the Earth. Our first person launches into space, a Russian. First woman launches into space, a Russian. First spacewalk, a Russian. Then in 1961, after just 15 minutes of manned spaceflight, a young president stands before Congress and says, I believe that this nation should commit itself to the goal of landing a man safely on the moon and returning him safely by the end of the decade. By the end of the decade, we only have 15 minutes in space. What an amazing objective. And we see that there's great value in having a vision. Things progressed. We had a number of very successful launches. The Mercury program taught us that we could actually live in space, that our eyes wouldn't pop out of our heads, that we could come back down. The Gemini mission, the main goal of that was to learn what we needed to do to actually land on the moon. One of the big objectives there was to learn how we could dock 2 objects together, what is known as the rendezvous. And then the first rocket of the Apollo program, during a routine mission, routine test, 3 astronauts, Roger Chaffee, Gus Grissom, and Ed White were performing a test. 15 pounds per square inch of pure oxygen, a spark, led to disaster. And our first astronauts died. Gene Cernan, who was the last person to step on the moon, said at that time, you know, I really didn't know if we were burying 3 people or if we were burying the whole program. Everything stopped. A full investigation lasting 1.5 years, and over 100 modifications made to the rocket and all the different models within the rocket. And then on December 21st, 1968, 3 other astronauts went into space. And they went and orbited around the moon 10 times. The first time that another human had left space and been to another heavenly body. And we learned that it was worth it. We also learned never to quit. Then the next year, on July 16th, 1969, there were 1 million people standing on a beach. Buzz Aldrin, who was one of the astronauts at the time, climbed to the top of the ladder. A 36-story rocket stood there. Everyone was looking at it. But not Buzz. He was looking out at the waves as they lapped in. He wanted to remember this moment. Then came out the words, 12, 11, 10, 9, ignition sequence, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes after the hour, we have a liftoff. And at that point, thrust came down through the rocket, went out all over the space, and thrust brighter than the sun, twice as long as the rocket was high, propelled the rocket up out of the Earth's atmosphere. And for the next 3 days, those astronauts traveled at about 7 miles a second for 240,000 miles. And that's when they learned that it was worth it. Chris Kraft, who was one of the flight directors, said, you know, we probably wouldn't have made it were it not for that fire on Apollo 1. It's a horrible thing to say, but we had to change the rocket. So the Apollo program taught us a number of things. It taught us that a vision is very valuable. It also taught us never to quit. And it also taught us that it's worth it. But above all, the Apollo program taught us that anything's possible. We landed on the moon. And so as Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong left the command module and went into the lunar module, and they separated from the command module and started their descent. It was about a half-hour descent. At one point, they were going 13 miles too fast, which could be disastrous. They're getting down. Neil Armstrong's looking down. He sees these big old boulders, the size of cars. Well, I can't land there, so I need to pitch up a little bit, and well, I could go that way or could go that way, but then I can't see where I'm landing. So the only other option is to pitch forward and go forward. And they ended up going more than 4 miles in the original landing spot. At that point, out comes the words, 1 minute, 60 seconds, you only have 60 seconds left of fuel. 30 seconds. And then with just 14 seconds left of fuel, Houston, Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed.